Well, I picked another lovely day, but at least I got my garage cleared out to do this. So today, W202 Mercedes, we're doing the lower control arm in the back there, the rear bushing in the lower control arm, clunking around like a bugger. I've got polyurethane replacements, and so to do this we're going to have to remove the front, unhook the front sway bar, take off the spring, unhook the shock. I've got new shocks to do as well, but I've already done lower ball joints and upper ball joints, so the only thing actually getting replaced are the shocks, the sway bar bushing, end link bushings, and the rear bushing on the lower control arm. So we got to remove this lower control arm at the back. I'm trying to hold a light at the same time. Yeah. I'm going to be removing the back where it attaches. Yeah. The front attachment point. Yeah. Let's see if we can get some light in there. The front attachment point right here. That's not enough light. Can't see anything. And the lower, well, where it attaches the lower ball joint. Anyway, I'll show you each step on the way. So anyway, let's get to it. Okay, first thing you're going to want to do is remove the lower shock mounting bolts so that you can get your spring compressor on the front spring. Sorry about the lighting. My garage is dark today and I'm in the garage and I'm not getting much light. Anyway, two 17s, 17 mil wrench on one side, and I've got a 17 mil impact socket on the other. And out. Now for the upper shock mount, you're just going to see the two bolts. You're going to take the upper off. And yeah, I'll get my magnetic pickup tool and get that sucker out of there. And then the second one comes right off. And the bushing should pull right out. It's a little bit of a bugger. Anyway, it's just a rubber bushing, a rubber grommet around the top of the shock mount. I need two hands to pry this sucker out of here, and I'll probably just pry it up with a screwdriver and pop it out. But once those two bolts are off, the washer's off, then you can slide the shock. Slide the shock down and out, and then we can get to the spring. So once the upper bolts are off and the lowers are off, you have to use a jack and jack up the front suspension underneath the front control arm. Jack it up probably about ½ an inch just to take, because the suspension is going to fall. It's going to extend all the way down to the farthest of its extension. And the upper suspension arm here, the upper arm that connects to the spindle, that will pinch the shock when it's all the way down, just the tiniest little bit. So now that this is loose, you can see the shock is loose here. I can grab it from the top and grab it from up here with both hands. It's tight, and pull it down, and then I'll be able to lift the shock right out. But if you just leave it hanging, once the shock is off there, the suspension can hang all the way down. It can hang down to its lowest point, and it's going to pinch in between the arm and the shock, and it's going to pinch it in there. It won't be able to come out. But now that you jack it up about ½ an inch to an inch, and then you'll be able to get it out of there. Okay, now the shock is out, and we're going to use got a spring compressor on the spring, and I'm going to compress the spring. I've got it, I jacked up the suspension. I jacked it up as far as I could to take to squish the spring and compress the spring so that my spring compressors wouldn't have to do that much work at first. And then now these ones won't reach around to the back very far, so I'm a little bit antsy about this spring. So I'm actually going to loosen that and slide it around back a little bit more. I'm not too happy about the way they're coming together here in the front, because that's going to compress one side of the spring, and that's no good. You need both sides. So I'll be back. Okay, well, the spring's compressed. I still got the floor jack jacked up underneath the control arm. I lowered it down once just to make sure that the spring is compressed, and it is. So once I take the weight off the floor jack, the spring will be held in place. I also strapped it to the top so that the spring doesn't need to drop out. I don't need to remove it because it is aligned in the upper mount there, so there's no point in dropping it out and having to realign that way. You're trying to keep a spring from exploding in your face. Be very careful when using spring compressors. A spring is just a metal shark waiting to bite your ass off, and it will the first chance it gets. Never had one fail on me yet, but there's always a first, and I'm not pushing my luck. Anyway, now I have to remove the lower ball joint. The easier one to remove. The easier one to remove is the rear one here. It's a 22 mil, so I've already loosened that one off and give it a good whack once with a hammer, and it's loose. So that'll release the spindle from the lower control arm at the front. And now we're gonna have to take off these two. Oh, pour light again. Sorry. Let's see if I can get some light here. Nice snow. We have to take off these two 13 mil bolts that hold the end sway bar link on there, because that's attached to the lower control arm too, and we're replacing the bushings at the same time. So, see, nice snow crap. It's real fun to work in. Two 13 mil bolts here at the end of the sway bar end link for the cap that holds that compresses the bushing in. So take those two off, and then we'll work on the bolts in the back of the control arm. Now, welcome to the underside of my car. Okay, looking out at the wheel there, and kind of sideways. Now, these are the two bolts that you're going to be removing. You're going to be removing the rear bolts. These are 22s, 22 millimeter both sides, and the front. Or sorry, I'm backwards. Rear. Actually, you can see the tear. Can you see the tear in the bushing on the bottom there? Yeah, that's why this thing's clunking around so much. That's the one we're going to be pressing out and putting a new one in. And this is the front. They're not, they generally don't give any problems. I don't have a replacement, so it better be good, or else I'll be pretty pissed. But not a lot of room to work under here. Actually, gonna have to remove this splash shield to get to the front, to this front bolt here. Front bolt there is under the splash shield. So there's 4 8mm bolts under your on the splash shield. There's 2 on the back and 2 on the front under the bumper, and the whole splash shield comes out. So I'll have to pull that off to get to that one rear bolt. But the front bolt of the front. I'm backwards here because I'm under the car. Sorry. The front mount, front bolt, is underneath the splash shield. I'm going to try it without taking it off first, because just the nuts back here, maybe I can pop it off and not have to get under there. Take the splash shield off, because I'm a lazy bastard at the moment, and I'm freezing my ass off under the car, but I am enjoying it. And there's the rear. I'll be taking that off as well. So 420, they're all 22s. The front and back are both 22s, so you're going to need a 22 mil socket and wrench, or two 20 mil wrench, 22 millimeter wrenches. I don't think you can get air tools under here. I don't quite have clearance for anything, so I'm going to be using grunt. Stand by. Okay, I've got the 2 nuts off the lower control arm bolts at the back, the inner bolts, and I've taken the splash shield off because I just couldn't be that lazy, and I was going to have to get in there anyway to get to the back of the bolt to push it back through. I've put a jack stand under the under the rotor. Actually, I'm gonna move it once I turn this camera off. I'm gonna move it and put it under the hub. But because when I'm gonna lower, once I pull the bolts out and lower the jack, the floor jack, all the weight is gonna come down, and it's all gonna be hanging on the upper control arm. All the weight's gonna be hanging from here, and it's probably gonna fall down if I don't have anything supporting it. It's gonna fall down, tear all the brake lines and the ABS lines and stuff, and that'll be a lot of fun. So I'm going to put a jack under there, so it's not going to go anywhere when I lower it. Hopefully it's not going to go anywhere. You never know, but I'd say it won't. So other than still have to take off the front sway bar end link, the top cap, the 213 mils on that, the 222s on the back. My car's a 97. It has spent all its life in Canada. Those bolts came off easy, nice and easy. Trust me, if this was a Honda, I've worked on a ton of Hondas and Toyotas. If this was a Honda or Toyota, I'd be under there with an acetylene torch, heating those nuts up and screaming my head off. But Mercedes, Volvo, this stuff comes off nice and easy. Happy, happy, happy. Anyway, I'll be back. Okay, well, the arm's out, and as you can see, it's dirty as crap. I'm going to probably clean it up a little before I put it back on. Now look at this rear bushing. Look at that. I can move it by hand. Like 3 or 4 pounds of pressure with my thumb, and it's moving. Imagine what a 4,000, 5,000 pound car is doing to that thing. So you can see the tear in the top. You can see that where it's torn in the top and the front, and in the rear, it's torn. Yeah, 1 hand, 2 hands. That's lovely. How do I hold this? That's better, kind of. You can see the tear there, and at the back it's, look at that. El Gonzo toast. So you can see the ring. This here, this round inner part, that's the bushing that goes straight through the control arm. And I'm not going to pound or press that one out. I am going to cut it with a Sawzall. I'm just going to use a metal blade and cut it. I'm going to get this out first, hammer this middle out, and then I'll cut the inner ring, and then I'll just push right out. And we'll put the new ones in. I'll be back. Okay, I whacked this sucker about 3 times with a hammer, and it just popped right out. It was holding on there by prayer. That's about it. And one lovely, I guess this is funny, but it's not. Lend your Sawzall to your buddy, and it comes back with all the metal blades either broken, or the last one that's there is just chewed to rat crap. So I have to make a nice 20-minute drive each way to town to get some metal blades. Not happy, but what can you do? Okay, so if you can see what I'm doing here, I'm using a Sawzall to slice through the inner the inner bushing race, I guess you could call it, or the inner bushing sleeve. I don't want to go too far and get into the outer collar of the lower control arm, but I'm just doing it slowly, and it's taking about 3 seconds now that I've got my blades. Anyway, I'll be back once these are out. Okay, so once that was cut, that took about 30 seconds, and see the relief cut in it. Just allowed enough tension off of this to be just pounded out in about 3 seconds. About 30 seconds possible, well, maybe. So there's the empty control arm end, and we're going to put the new bushing in and see how she goes. Hold on a second, let's grab one. Hell did I put them? Good God, would help to know where I put stuff. There we go. Okay, so here's the new one, the polyurethane one. Ooh, I'm a little worried that that center hole is not the same size as the original. If it isn't, oh yay, SOL. What the hell? Okay. Something's gonna have to be figured out here. Someone's not happy at the moment. Okay, let's just never mind that last rant because it does fit in. For some reason it's wider on the outside of that other inner bushing. It's wider than the inside. Don't get it. It just narrows down to this width in the very middle of the bushing. Not quite sure I understand why, but it does. Anyway, the bolt does fit through. So we're going to, I don't know how this sucker goes in. I'm probably just going to have to slide it in. I don't want to pound on it, but actually it looks like it's going to just slip in there. So I got a rubber mallet. I will just pound it in with the rubber mallet. Not sure which way to go in. I don't think it matters. Well, we'll find out. Okay, so the control arm is bolted back up. It's not tightened down because we'll do that once it's in place. We'll tighten it once it's all hooked back up and the weight is on the suspension again. So now we're just going to raise it up, position the spring properly, and then put the floor jack under there and jack it back up so it's in place. Slip the lower ball joint back into the spindle, and I did not use a jack stand to prop up the brake rotor. It was just in the way, so I just hung. Yeah, light would work. Took an old shop towel, wrapped it around the fender, and hung a tie strap or a tie down to hold the suspension up. Just strapped it down inside the engine compartment to hold the suspension up. So this is going to be jacked up in and bolted back on. Can't really do this while I'm filming. Okay, the new shock is in as well. Everything is back bolted together. Running nice. Okay, so quickly before my battery dies again, everything is bolted back together, and I'm going to jack the suspension up a little bit and tighten the rear control arm bolts. That's about it. Okay, so finally all done. Both sides, lower control arm, polyurethane bushings on the rear thrust arms, new sway bar end links, and new steering stabilizer. I guess about 5-6 hours from start to finish. Freezing cold, that didn't help, and running off to get hacksaw blades. But the hacksaw trick does work very easily. It's if you've got a you could use a hacksaw, but if you use a sawzall, that'll work as well to take those bushings out. You don't need to pound the crap out of them. On a scale of 1 to 10 in hardness, I would say, in toughness, maybe a 6, just because you need coil spring compressors, and yeah, it's not that big a deal. Maybe even a 5. It's not really that hard. It's just time consuming, that's all. You do have to get an alignment when you're done, because the lower control arms do have, they do move in and out for camber. So yeah, I'm going to have to get a 4-wheel alignment done because I just did the rear suspension and it needs to be done. It's a little wandery now, even though I tried to adjust it back to where it was. Same with the front. I haven't test driven it yet, but it should be fine. I'm going to get a 4-wheel alignment done. And that's about it. That's all I can tell you. There's no special tools really other than coil spring compressors. 22mm sockets or box end wrenches, and for the shock, 17s, top and bottom. The bottom shock bolts are 17s and the tops are 17s. and 13 for the sway bar end link bushings. There's not a heck of a lot of tools needed, to be honest. Floor jack would be, I can't say I couldn't do it without a floor jack. But yeah, that's about it. Sorry for rambling.